Henry didn't just bring quarters in that shoebox. He brought a ghost. As he stood on that stage, stripped of his microphone and mocked by the elite, he began to sing a melody that shouldn't exist. A song written 10 years ago by the man judging him. A song that was never supposed to leave a locked room in Malibu. Tonight, the past isn't just catching up. It's screaming. The auditorium of the Baltimore Heights Arts Center was a cathedral of judgment. Up on the stage, Henry Brooks looked small, a smudge of gray cotton against the blinding white spotlights. Below him, Vicki Harper leaned back, her arms crossed, a serpent's smile playing on her lips. She had cut the audio. She had rigged the game. She expected the boy to crumble, to burst into tears and run back to the slums he came from. But Henry didn't move. He reached out and gripped the cold metal of the microphone stand. With a slow, deliberate motion, he clicked the off switch and let the mic drop. The thud echoed through the hall like a gavel. "I don't need your electricity to tell my story," Henry whispered, though his voice carried to the very last row. He took a breath. It wasn't the breath of a child. It was the breath of a man stepping into a blizzard. Then he began to sing. "Where the red dirt meets the sea, you promised you'd wait for me." The melody was haunting. It was raw, stripped of auto-tune and artifice. It was a blues-infused lullaby that felt like it had been pulled directly from the red clay of the South. In the front row, Cole Harrington, the man who had built a billion-dollar empire on the next big thing, felt the blood drain from his face. His fingers gripped the mahogany armrests of his chair so hard the wood groaned. That song. He hadn't heard that melody in a decade. He had written it in a fever dream on a humid night in Georgia for a woman named Sarah. He had never recorded it. He had never published it. He had burned the only copy of the lyrics the night he decided his career was more important than the woman he loved. How did this boy know the notes of my soul? Vicki Harper noticed Cole's reaction. Her smile faltered. She leaned over, whispering harshly, "Cole, the audio is failing. I'll have security remove him." "Touch him," Cole growled, his voice vibrating with a sudden, terrifying violence, "and you're fired before he hits the chorus." Vicki recoiled as if she'd been slapped. She looked at Henry, then back at Cole. She saw it then, the way the boy tilted his head, the sharp line of his jaw. It was a mirror image. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't just a contestant. This was a liability. On stage, Henry's voice rose, cracking with the weight of his mother's medical bills, the weight of every hungry night, the weight of the Protect Mom tape digging into his skin. He wasn't singing for the judges. He was singing to the universe, demanding a miracle. As the final note lingered in the air, vibrating against the high ceilings, the silence that followed was deafening. No one clapped. No one breathed. Henry wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled photograph. He didn't show the audience. He didn't show the cameras. He walked to the edge of the stage, knelt down, and placed it face down on the judge's table directly in front of Cole Harrington. "My mom said I should show this to the man who wrote that song," Henry said, his voice trembling for the first time. "She said you'd know what it means." Henry turned and walked off the stage, his sneakers squeaking on the polished wood. Cole reached out, his hand shaking uncontrollably. He flipped the photo over. It was a Polaroid, dated 10 years ago. It showed a young Sarah Brooks, glowing with health, standing in front of a blue Chevrolet. She was holding a sonogram, and on the back in faded ink were the words, "He has your eyes, Cole, come home." Cole's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looked up, searching for the boy, but Henry was gone. Vicki leaned over, her eyes narrowing as she saw the photo. "Cole, what is that? We have a schedule to keep." Cole didn't answer. He stood up, knocking his chair over, and sprinted toward the backstage exit. But as he pushed through the heavy velvet curtains, he didn't find Henry. He found two men in dark suits, hospital administrators. "Mr. Harrington," one of them asked, "we're looking for the legal guardian of Henry Brooks, his mother, Sarah Brooks. There's been a complication. We need the payment cleared in the next 60 minutes, or we have to move her to palliative care." The clock was ticking, the secret was out, and the war for Henry's future had just begun. Cole Harrington had millions in the bank, but as he stood in that hospital corridor, he realized the only currency that mattered was time, and the woman who held the key to his past was slipping away. But Vicky Harper wasn't done yet. She had one more trap set for the boy with the golden voice. The hospital hallway smelled of antiseptic and forgotten prayers. Cole sprinted past the nurse's station, his heart thundering against his ribs like a trapped animal. Every footstep felt like a second lost. He reached room 402 and stopped dead. Inside, the lights were dimmed. Sarah Brooks looked like a porcelain doll, pale, fragile, and far too thin. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor was the only thing keeping the silence at bay. Cole stepped inside, his designer shoes clicking softly on the linoleum. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice cracking. Her eyes flickered open. For a moment she looked confused, then a spark of recognition flared. "Cole," she breathed, her voice barely a thread of silk. You saw him, you saw Henry." "I saw him," Cole said, kneeling by the bed. He took her hand, it was cold, so cold. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years, Sarah, I would have come, I would have fixed everything." Sarah managed a weak, bittersweet smile. "You were building a kingdom, Cole. I wasn't going to be the anchor that dragged you down, but Henry, he has your fire. He has your soul. He saved every penny, just to get in front of you." Suddenly, the door burst open. It was the hospital administrator, a man named Dr. Aris, looking grim. "Mr. Harrington, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the insurance company has officially denied the claim for the experimental surgery. We have a surgeon standing by, but the hospital requires a deposit of $50,000 immediately to begin the procedure. If we don't start in 40 minutes, her lungs will fail." Cole didn't hesitate. He pulled out a black titanium credit card. "Take it. Take whatever you need." Dr. Aris took the card, swiped it on a mobile terminal, and frowned. "Declined." Cole froze. "That's impossible. That card has no limit." "Try it again," Cole demanded. "Declined again, sir." Cole's blood turned to ice. He pulled out his phone and dialed his business manager. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, not his manager, but Vicky Harper. "Hello, Cole," Vicky said, her voice smooth as expensive bourbon. "I noticed some suspicious activity on the company accounts. As the board director of the Arts Foundation, I've frozen all outgoing corporate funds pending an emergency audit. You know how the bylaws are, darling. We can't have you misusing funds for personal charity cases." "Vicky, you're killing her," Cole roared, his voice echoing in the sterile room. "I'm following the rules, Cole," Vicky purred. "Maybe if you hadn't tried to replace me, I'd be more inclined to help. But as it stands, you're penniless until Monday morning. And it looks like Sarah doesn't have until Monday." The line went dead. Cole looked at Sarah. She was slipping back into unconsciousness. He looked at his watch. 32 minutes remaining. He ran back out into the hallway, his mind racing. He had no cash, no access to his accounts. He was the most powerful man in the music industry, and he was powerless. Then he saw him. Henry was sitting in the waiting room, his head in his hands, the empty Nike shoe box on the chair next to him. He looked up as Cole approached. The boy's eyes weren't filled with hope anymore. They were filled with a cold, hard realization. The money didn't go through, did it? Henry asked. Vicky blocked it, Cole said, breathless. She's trying to force my hand. Henry, listen to me. I need you to stay here. I'm going to find a way. There is no way, Henry said, standing up. The doctor said 40 minutes. That was 10 minutes ago. Henry looked at the shoebox. Then he looked at the grand piano sitting in the hospital lobby, a donation for healing through music. Wait, Cole said, seeing the gears turning in the boy's head. What are you doing? You're a producer, right? Henry asked, his voice suddenly sharp and focused. You have 1 million followers on your live stream. You have the Harrington app. If we can't use your money, we'll use theirs. Cole understood instantly. It was a gamble, a desperate 1 in a million shot. Cole grabbed a tablet from the nurse's station and logged into his professional streaming account. Within seconds, a notification went out to 10 million people. Cole Harrington live, the song of life. Ladies and gentlemen, Cole said, his face appearing on screens across the globe. I'm not here to talk about stars or records. I'm here to save a life. This is Henry. He's the most talented singer I've ever met, and he's my son. His mother is dying in room 402. We need $50,000 in the next 20 minutes. There's a donate button at the bottom of the screen if you've ever loved a song I've produced. If you've ever felt a melody in your heart, help me save her. Henry sat at the piano. He didn't have a coach. He didn't have a warm-up. He just placed his small hands on the keys. He didn't sing the song from the stage. He sang something new, something he was writing in that very moment, a song for the woman in the bed. Don't close your eyes. The sun is coming up. I've got the world on my shoulders, but you're the one holding me up. The live viewers count exploded. 100,000, 500,000, 1 million. The donation bar at the bottom began to fill. $5,000, $12,000, $28,000. But back at the art center, Vicky Harper was watching the stream. Her face was twisted in a mask of rage. She picked up her phone and called the hospital's head of security. There is a boy creating a public disturbance in your lobby, Vicky hissed. He's soliciting money illegally on hospital grounds. Remove him, now. As Henry reached the bridge of the song, his voice soaring with a celestial power that brought nurses and doctors to a standstill, 4 heavy-set security guards marched into the lobby. Kid, move away from the piano, the lead guard shouted. He's not moving, Cole shouted, stepping in front of the guards. Sir, step aside or we will arrest you both. The donation bar hit $46,000, only $4,000 to go. 15 minutes left on the clock. One of the guards grabbed Henry's arm. The music stopped with a jarring, discordant crash. No, Henry screamed. Let me finish, just 1 more minute. The stream is down, Cole yelled, looking at the tablet. The security guard had knocked it to the floor, shattering the screen. The lobby was chaos. Henry was being dragged toward the exit. Cole was being pinned against a pillar. And upstairs, in room 402, the heart monitor began a long, steady, terrifying drone. Beep. The sound of a life ending. They say a mother's love knows no bounds, but they haven't seen the fury of a son who has nothing left to lose. As the guards pinned Henry to the floor, they thought they had won. They thought the $4,000 gap was a wall he couldn't climb. But in the shadows of the hospital, a secret donor was about to step into the light, and Vicky Harper's empire was about to feel the first crack of its foundation. The sound of the flatline from the monitor upstairs seemed to vibrate through the very floorboards of the lobby. Henry froze. His arms were pinned behind his back by a guard who weighed twice as much as he did. His face was pressed against the cold marble floor, But as that sound reached his ears, the fear in Henry's eyes vanished. It was replaced by something ancient, something terrifying. "Let me go," Henry whispered. It wasn't a plea, it was a warning. "Stay down, kid," the guard yelled, but his voice lacked conviction. He felt the temperature in the room drop. Cole Harrington, pinned against a pillar by two other guards, was screaming for someone to help, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos. He watched as Henry, with a strength that shouldn't have been possible for a 10-year-old boy, arched his back and threw the guard off him. Henry didn't run for the exit. He didn't run for the stairs. He lunged for the shattered tablet on the floor. "The stream," Henry shouted to Cole. "Fix the stream." Cole scrambled forward, grabbing the broken device. The screen was a spider web of glass, cutting into his thumbs, but the Go Live light was still flickering a faint, dying red. "It's damaged, Henry. The antenna is gone," Cole yelled. Upstairs, the Code Blue team was rushing into room 402. The paddles were out. "Clear!" The sound of a body thumping against a mattress. Again, "Clear!" In the lobby, Vicky Harper walked in, her heels clicking like a death march. She looked at the chaos, the guards, the broken tablet, the bleeding boy, and she laughed. It was a high, tinkling sound that made the skin crawl. "It's over, Cole," she said, smoothing her silk dress. "I've had your accounts flagged for money laundering. The hospital won't touch a cent of that donated money until a full federal investigation is complete. By the time the lawyers are done, your little family reunion will be a funeral." Cole looked at Vicky with a pure, unadulterated hatred. "You're a monster, Vicky. She was your friend once." "Friends don't let friends ruin a billion-dollar brand with a charity case," she snapped. But while they argued, Henry wasn't watching them. He was looking at the hospital's intercom system on the reception desk. He saw the emergency broadcast button. Henry didn't need a tablet. He didn't need a live stream. He didn't need the world. He just needed the hospital. With a burst of speed, Henry leapt over the reception desk. Before the guards could react, he slammed his hand down on the red button. "Attention all staff and visitors," the automated voice crackled over every speaker in the building. "Emergency broadcast enabled." Henry grabbed the microphone. He didn't sing. He spoke. "My name is Henry Brooks," he said, his voice echoing in the hallways, the cafeteria, the surgical suites, and room 402. "My mom is Sarah Brooks. She's dying because a woman named Vicky Harper won't let a credit card be swiped. I have $46,000 in a broken tablet. I only need 4. If there is anyone in this building who believes a life is worth more than a bank account, please help me." Silence followed. Then the lobby doors swung open again. It wasn't more security. It was a janitor. He was an older man, his skin the color of mahogany, his eyes tired. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. He walked to the desk and laid it down. "For your mama, son," the man said. Then a nurse from the gift shop stepped forward. She took off a gold bracelet. "This is worth at least $500. Take it." A businessman in a suit who had been waiting for a ride looked at Vicky Harper with disgust. He pulled out a checkbook. "I'm the CEO of West End Logistics. I'll cover the remaining $4,000. And Vicky, my company is pulling its sponsorship from your arts foundation effective immediately." The Code Blue team upstairs stopped. The lead surgeon, Dr. Vance, heard the broadcast. He looked at the flatline. Then he looked at the door where a nurse was frantically waving a confirmed payment receipt. "We have the funds," the nurse panted. "The CEO of West End just cleared the deposit." Dr. Vance didn't waste a second. "Get her to the OR. Now, we're not losing her today." In the lobby, Vicky Harper's face was the color of ash. Her phone began to vibrate in her hand. Call after call from board members, sponsors, and the press. The Song of Life stream had been down, but Henry's voice over the intercom had been recorded by 50 different smartphones in the lobby. She was trending, not as a philanthropist, but as a murderer. "This isn't over," Vicky hissed, backing away as the crowd began to murmur against her. "You think you can just walk into my world and take it? I'll sue you for every breath you take." "Get out," Cole said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Before I forget I'm a gentleman." Vicky turned and fled into the night, the rain soaking her expensive hair, the sound of the crowd's boos ringing in her ears. Cole walked over to Henry. The boy was shaking, the adrenaline finally leaving his system. Cole reached out and, for the first time in 10 years, he pulled his son into a hug. Henry didn't pull away. He buried his face in Cole's leather jacket and sobbed. Is she going to be okay?" Henry asked. "She's in surgery, Henry. She's a fighter," Cole whispered. "Just like you." But as they stood there, a man in a gray trench coat watched from the shadows of the parking garage. He held a camera with a long lens. He clicked a photo of Cole and Henry. Then he picked up his phone. "Yeah, I got the shot," the man said into the receiver. "But there's a problem. A woman named Vicky just called. She wants the other files released. The ones about Sarah's accident 10 years ago, if the world finds out what really happened that night. Cole Harrington won't just be out of a job. He'll be in an orange jumpsuit." The victory in the lobby was just a battle. The war for the truth was only beginning, and the truth was a weapon that could kill Sarah Brooks more effectively than any cancer. Cole Harrington thought he could buy his way back into a family he abandoned. He thought a check for $50,000 could wash the blood off his hands. But Vicky Harper has a souvenir from the night Cole left Sarah 10 years ago, a police report that was never filed, and a video that could send Cole from the penthouse to a prison cell before the sun rises. The fluorescent lights of the surgical waiting room were unforgiving. Cole sat in a hard plastic chair, his head back against the wall, eyes closed. For the first time in a decade, the silence wasn't filled with the sound of deals or Demos. It was filled with the ghost of Sarah's voice. "He has your eyes, Cole. Come home." He had failed her once. He had chosen a recording contract over a crying baby and a woman who had given him everything. He had told himself she was better off without him, that a man with his demons shouldn't be a father. But looking at the $240 in quarters still scattered in his mind's eye, he realized he hadn't protected her. He had simply run. "She's stable," a voice said. Cole bolted upright. Dr. Vance was standing there, his surgical mask hanging around his neck. "The tumor was aggressive, but we got it all. The next 48 hours are critical for her recovery, but she's breathing on her own." Cole felt a weight lift off his chest, so heavy he almost stumbled. "Can I see her?" "Briefly, she's in the ICU, and Mr. Harrington." The doctor paused, his expression softening. "Your son." That boy didn't just pay for this surgery. He gave this entire hospital a reason to believe again. You should be proud. "I am," Cole whispered, his voice thick. "I don't deserve him, but I am." But as Cole turned toward the ICU doors, his phone buzzed with a vibration that felt like an electric shock. An anonymous text. No subject. Just a link to a private cloud drive and 4 words. "The Georgia Night. Watch." Cole's breath hitched. He stepped into a quiet alcove and opened the file. The video was graining, shot from a security camera at a gas station in rural Georgia, dated July 14, 2016. It showed a younger Cole, looking frantic, arguing with Sarah beside a blue Chevrolet. In the video, Cole is seen grabbing Sarah's shoulders, shaking her, before slamming his fist into the car's window. The glass shatters. He climbs into his own car and peels away, leaving a pregnant Sarah slumped on the pavement in the rain, clutching her stomach. The video didn't show the whole story. It didn't show that he was trying to stop her from driving in a storm, or that the shaking was a desperate attempt to make her listen. It looked like an assault. It looked like a hit and run on a pregnant woman. A second text arrived. 1 hour until I send this to TMZ and the DA. Unless you pull Henry from the competition and sign over your shares of Harrington Records to the foundation. V. Vicky, she wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to erase him. Meanwhile, in the ICU, Henry sat by his mother's bed. He was holding her hand, his thumb tracing the IV line. He was exhausted, but he wouldn't close his eyes. He was terrified that if he blinked, she would vanish back into the dream of the last year. The door creaked open. It wasn't Cole. It was a man in a delivery uniform carrying a massive bouquet of lilies. For Sarah Brooks, the man said, setting the flowers down. There's a card. Henry took the card. It was gold embossed. To a brave mother, get well soon, but remember, some debts are paid in blood, not quarters. See you at the finals, Henry, if you make it that far. Henry felt a chill crawl up his spine. He looked at the lilies. Lilies were for funerals. He stood up, his heart racing. He needed to find Cole. He ran out of the ICU and into the hallway, but Cole was nowhere to be found. The shadows of the city. Cole was in the parking garage, leaning against his car, the video playing on a loop on his phone. His world was collapsing. If he stayed, he would be arrested, and the scandal would destroy Henry's burgeoning career before it even started. If he left, he was the coward all over again. Suddenly, a black SUV pulled up, blocking his exit. The window rolled down. Vicky Harper sat in the back seat, looking like a queen on a dark throne. You have 30 minutes, Cole, she said, her voice amplified by the car's speakers. The board is meeting at midnight to vote on your removal. All I have to do is hit send. Imagine the headlines. Music mogul left pregnant girlfriend to die in Georgia mud. You'll be lucky if you don't get 20 years. I didn't leave her to die, Cole screamed, slamming his hand on her window. I was scared. I called an ambulance from the road. The records say otherwise, Vicky smiled. And since I own the company that handles the hospital's old digital archives, those records don't exist anymore. You're a ghost, Cole, and I'm the one haunting you. She rolled up the window, and the SUV sped away. Cole stood in the dark, the smell of exhaust and rain filling his lungs. He looked up at the hospital windows. Somewhere up there, his son was waiting for him. Somewhere up there, the only woman he ever loved was fighting for her life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver lighter. He looked at the Polaroid Henry had given him. He had to make a choice, the legacy or the boy, the lie or the truth. He dialed a number, not his lawyer, not his manager. He dialed the one person who knew the truth about that night in Georgia. Detective Miller, Cole said, his voice cold and steady. This is Cole Harrington. I want to report a crime, not one happening now, but one I committed 10 years ago, and I need you to bring a camera. Cole wasn't going to run. He was going to set a trap of his own. But to catch a snake like Vicky, he had to be willing to get bitten. Back in the ICU, Henry was staring at the lilies when he noticed something. Tucked deep inside the plastic wrap of the bouquet was a small black device, a digital recorder. He pressed play. A voice filled the room. It wasn't Vicky's. It was a voice from Henry's nightmares, the voice of the man who had bullied his mother for rent money for years. The kid thinks he's a star, Vicky, but he's just a pawn. Tell me when you want the accident to happen at the finals. I'll make sure the stage lights malfunction right over his head. Henry's breath hitched. They weren't just after Cole. They were going to kill him on live television. Henry found the recorder. But the voice on the other end was a ghost from a past he thought his mother had buried. Vicky Harper isn't just trying to win a competition, she's staging an execution. With the finals only 48 hours away, Henry must play the part of a star while living the life of a target. But the boy who saved his mother with quarters is about to show the world that you can't silence a voice that's already survived the storm. Henry stared at the small black device nestled among the lilies. The voice on the recording, the man talking to Vicky, it sounded like Marcus Thorne. Marcus was the collector for the slumlord who owned their old apartment complex. He was a man who enjoyed the sound of breaking bones and the sight of fear. If Marcus is working for Vicky, no one is safe. Henry looked at his mother. Sarah was still asleep, her face finally peaceful, unaware that the stage her son had fought so hard to reach was now rigged with a metaphorical, and perhaps literal, noose. He didn't call the police. He knew how the world worked. To the police, he was just a kid from the bad side of town. To them, Vicky Harper was a pillar of the community. He needed a different kind of shield. He needed the man he was slowly starting to call father. The midnight meeting. Cole Harrington stood on the rooftop of the hospital, the cold Baltimore wind whipping his hair. Standing across from him was Detective Miller, a veteran with tired eyes and a badge that had seen too much. "I'm turning myself in, Miller," Cole said, handing over a folder. "But not for what Vicky thinks. That video from Georgia, it's a fragment. Here are the phone records from that night. I called the local sheriff 4 times. I stayed on the line until they confirmed they found her car. I didn't run away. I was sent away by Sarah's father, who threatened to kill me if I ever touched her again." Miller flipped through the papers, his brow furrowing. "This is a 10-year-old family dispute, Cole. Why bring it up now?" "Because Vicky is using it to blackmail me into silence while she targets my son," Cole said, his voice dropping an octave. "She's going to sabotage the finals. She's going to hurt Henry to protect the image of her foundation." "I can't arrest someone for an intent to sabotage a talent show, Cole," Miller sighed. "Then don't arrest her," Cole replied, his eyes glowing with a dark intensity. "Just help me set the stage. If she wants a show, we're going to give her a masterpiece." 48 hours to the finals. The art center was a hive of activity. Roadies were hauling crates, lighting technicians were hanging intelligent rigs, and the air was thick with the scent of ozone and expensive perfume. Vicky Harper stood on the mezzanine, watching the rehearsals through a pair of designer sunglasses. She looked like a general surveying a battlefield. She didn't know that Cole had already confessed to Miller. She didn't know that Henry had found the recorder. She thought she held all the cards. "Is the trap set?" she whispered into her earpiece. "The center stage rig is rigged to a secondary motor," a voice crackled back. "One command from the lighting booth and the entire overhead array slips. It'll look like an unfortunate mechanical failure. The boy won't even know what hit him." "Good," Vicky said, a cold smile touching her lips. "Make sure the cameras are rolling. I want the world to see the tragedy of the boy who almost made it." The final rehearsal. Henry arrived at the center 4 hours before showtime. He looked tired, his hoodie pulled low, but his eyes were sharp. He walked onto the stage, the wood creaking under his sneakers. He looked up at the massive lighting rig hanging 60 feet above his head. Thousands of pounds of steel and glass, held up by cables that Vicky's men had tampered with. He felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Cole. "You don't have to do this, Henry," Cole whispered. "We have enough evidence to cancel the show. We can go to the feds." Henry looked at the empty seats, then back at Cole. "If we cancel, she wins. She'll hide the money, she'll scrub the files, and she'll come after Mom again when we aren't looking. We have to finish this tonight. On camera, where the whole world is watching." Cole looked at the boy, his son, and saw a courage he himself had lacked for a decade. "Then we do it your way, but listen to me. When you hit the bridge of the song, I need you to move to the far left of the stage. Don't ask why, just move." The curtain rises. 6:00 p.m. The lights dimmed. The roar of the crowd was like a physical wave. Millions were watching the live stream. The shoebox kid had become a national sensation. In the hospital, Sarah Brooks had been moved to a private suite. A nurse turned on the television. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw her son stand in the center of the spotlight. Vicky Harper took her seat at the judge's table. She looked at Cole, who was sitting 3 seats away. She blew him a mocking kiss. Cole didn't react. He just stared at the stage. "Our next contestant," the announcer's voice boomed, "needs no introduction. Singing for his mother's life, Henry Brooks." The music started, a heavy, soulful cello line. Henry gripped the mic. He began to sing, but it wasn't the song from the audition. It was a song about shadows, a song about snakes in silk dresses, a song about the truth that lives in the dark. "You can dim the lights, but you can't hide the sun. You can cut the wires, but the race is already won." In the lighting booth, Marcus Thorne reached for the manual override switch. His finger hovered over the red button labeled emergency release. "Do it," Vicky's voice hissed in his ear. Marcus slammed the button. Above the stage, a sickening snap of steel echoed through the hall. The massive lighting rig groaned, tilted, and began to plummet toward the center of the stage where Henry stood, bathed in a single white beam. The audience screamed. Cole lunged forward. But Henry didn't freeze. As the steel began its deadly descent, he remembered Cole's words. "Move to the far left." Henry leaped. Crash. The rig slammed into the stage, sending splinters of wood and glass flying like shrapnel. The sound was like a bomb going off. Dust filled the air. The cameras shook. The live stream went to static for 3 terrifying seconds. Vicky Harper stood up, a look of fake horror plastered on her face, ready to scream for an ambulance. But as the dust settled, the white beam of the one remaining spotlight cut through the haze. Henry was standing on the far left of the stage, unharmed, the microphone still in his hand. He hadn't stopped singing. His voice rose above the wreckage, clearer and more powerful than ever. But that wasn't the shock. The shock was the giant screen behind him. It wasn't showing the competition logo anymore. It was showing a live feed from the lighting booth. There was Marcus Thorne, his hand still on the release switch, and standing behind him with his gun drawn was Detective Miller. And then the audio changed. The entire auditorium and the millions watching at home heard a recording play over the house speakers. The center stage rig is rigged to a secondary motor. One command from the lighting booth and the entire overhead array slips. It'll look like an unfortunate mechanical failure. It was Vicky's voice, clear, cold, murderous. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut behind Vicky Harper's back. Vicky Harper is headed to a cell, but she left behind a time bomb with a 10-year fuse. While Henry celebrates his victory, Cole Harrington is realizing that the man in the trench coat wasn't working for Vicky. He was working for someone much closer to home. And the photo he just dropped in Cole's lap doesn't show a crime from the past. It shows a murder being planned for tonight. The adrenaline was a poison now, leaving Henry's limbs heavy as he stepped off the broken stage. He was ushered into a private green room, away from the flashing bulbs of the paparazzi and the screaming fans. He wanted his mother. He wanted to hear her voice, not the roar of 1,000 strangers. Cole followed him, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. He had saved his son, but in doing so, He had invited the world into their darkest closets. "You did it, Henry," Cole said, his voice trembling. "You didn't just sing, you survived." Henry looked at his father. "Is she gone? Is Vicky really gone?" "She's in custody, Henry. She'll never touch you or your mother again." But as Cole spoke, a knock came at the door. Not the polite knock of a staff member, but a sharp, authoritative rap. Detective Miller stepped in, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a man in a sharp, charcoal suit, Julian Vane, the chairman of the board for Harrington Records, Cole's mentor. The man who had given Cole his first break 20 years ago. "Cole," Julian said, his voice as smooth as polished stone. "A tragic night, a miracle, but a tragedy nonetheless. The board is in shock. We've already released a statement distancing ourselves from Vicky." Cole narrowed his eyes. "You're here late, Julian. I thought you were in London." "I took a private jet the moment I saw the stream," Julian said, stepping closer to Henry. He reached out to pat the boy's shoulder, but Henry flinched away. The boy's instincts, honed by years of avoiding trouble, were screaming. Julian's hand lingered in the air for a second too long. Strong boy, just like his father. "Detective, why are you still here?" Cole asked, sensing the shift in the room. Miller looked uneasy. He pulled a manila envelope from under his arm. "Cole, we processed Vicky's phone. We found the messages she sent to the lighting booth, but we found something else. Someone was paying Vicky to sabotage the show. Someone was funneling money into her offshore accounts months before Henry even registered for the competition." Cole felt the floor tilt. "What are you saying?" "Vicky didn't hate Henry because he was street," Miller said. "She hated him because she was ordered to ensure no heirs ever appeared to challenge the Harrington estate. She wasn't the mastermind, Cole. She was the hitman." Julian Vane didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply adjusted his cufflinks. "Money makes people do strange things, Detective. I'm sure Vicky had her reasons." "The money came from a shell company called Evergreen Assets," Miller continued, his eyes locked on Julian. "We're still tracing the final signature, but the IP address used to authorize the final payment to the lighting technician. It didn't come from Vicky's office." Cole looked at Julian, the man who had counseled him to leave Sarah 10 years ago, the man who had told him a family would dilute the brand, the man who stood to inherit everything if Cole died without an heir. "Julian," Cole's voice was a whisper of pure betrayal. "Don't be dramatic, Cole," Julian said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "I've spent 20 years protecting you from your own impulses. I told you Sarah was a mistake. I told you that boy would be your undoing. I was only trying to keep the empire intact." "You tried to kill a 10-year-old boy," Cole lunged, but Miller stepped between them. "I tried to remove a complication," Julian corrected, his voice turning cold. "And I still have that video, Cole. The full video. The one where you didn't just walk away. The one where you told Sarah you wished the baby was never born. How do you think the hero-father narrative will play when the world hears your voice saying those words?" Henry stood in the corner, his heart shattering. He looked at Cole. "Did you say that? Did you wish I wasn't born?" Cole turned to Henry, his soul bared. "Henry, I was a different man. I was scared, I was selfish, He said it," Julian interrupted, twisting the knife. "And I have the recording to prove it. Now, Cole, here is the new deal. You resign. You disappear. You take the boy and the sick mother and you move to a farm in the middle of nowhere. You never speak to the press again. If you do, the recording goes live. And Henry will spend the rest of his life knowing his father hated his existence before he even took his first breath." The room went silent. The only sound was the distant, muffled noise of the cleanup crew on the stage. Henry looked at the ground. He thought of the quarters in the shoebox. He thought of the Protect Mom tape. He thought of the man who had hugged him in the hospital. Then Henry reached into his pocket. He pulled out the small digital recorder he had found in the lilies. "I don't care what he said 10 years ago," Henry said, his voice cracking but firm. He looked Julian Vane in the eye. "Because I have a recording from tonight. I have you talking to Marcus Thorne about the accident. I found it in the flowers you sent." Julian laughed. "That's a toy, kid. My lawyers will have that thrown out of court in 5 minutes." "Maybe," Henry said, "but I didn't just record it. When I was on stage before the lights fell, I tucked this recorder into the back of my belt, and the microphone was patched into the house speakers." Henry looked at Cole. "I didn't move to the left because you told me to, Dad. I moved because I heard the gears clicking, and I wanted everyone to hear what came next." Henry pressed a button on the side of the recorder. A different voice came out, not Julian, but the sound of the stage manager's headset. "Mr. Vane says drop it now. Make it look messy." Julian's face finally cracked. The charcoal suit suddenly looked like a shroud. "Detective," Cole asked, his voice steady now. Miller stepped forward, his hand on his handcuffs. "Julian Vane, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." As Julian was let out, he turned back to Cole. "You think you've won? You're a broken man, Cole. You'll fail them again. It's in your blood." The door slammed shut. Henry and Cole stood alone in the silence of the green room. The weight of the night, the weight of 10 years, sat between them. "Is it true?" Henry asked quietly. "Did you say those things about me?" Cole knelt down so he was eye level with his son. "I was a coward, Henry. I was a man who didn't know how to love anything but himself. I said things I can never take back. But for the last 10 years, I've lived in a house full of gold and felt like I was starving. Tonight, when I saw you on that stage, I realized I wasn't the one saving you. You were the one saving me." Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out his own wrist. He had wrapped a piece of white athletic tape around it. On it, he had written, "Protect son." Henry looked at the tape. He looked at the man who had been a stranger 48 hours ago. "We need to go to the hospital," Henry said. "Mom's going to be awake soon, and she's going to have a lot of questions." "Then we'll give her the truth," Cole said. "All of it." But as they walked out of the arts center, the man in the trench coat was leaning against a lamppost. He watched them get into the car. He didn't have a camera this time. He had a heavy, black envelope. He waited until the car pulled away, then he walked over to a trash can and dropped the envelope inside. On the front, in Julian Vane's handwriting, it said, "In case of my arrest, release the Sarah Brooks medical records from 2016. The man struck a match and dropped it into the can. He watched the truth burn away into ash. "Sometimes," the man whispered to the wind, "the boy deserves a happy ending. They say you can't go home again, but Cole Harrington is finding out that home isn't a place. It's a person you didn't deserve to know." As Sarah Brooks opens her eyes to a world where her son is a hero and her past is a headline, a new secret is revealed. A secret that wasn't hidden in a shoe box or a digital recorder, but in the very song that saved her life. The morning sun crept over the Baltimore skyline, bleeding gold and violet through the reinforced glass of the ICU. Henry sat in the armchair next to his mother's bed. He was wearing a clean shirt Cole had bought him, expensive Egyptian cotton that felt strange against his skin. On the bedside table sat the Nike shoe box. It was empty now, its mission complete, but Henry couldn't bring himself to throw it away. It was his armor. Sarah's fingers moved first, a slight twitch against the white sheets. Henry froze, his breath catching. "Ma," he whispered. Her eyes flickered open, cloudy at first, then sharpening as they landed on her son. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Henry quickly held a straw to her lips. "Henry," she rasped, her voice a ghost of its former self. The competition, did you? We won, Ma, Henry said, a tear finally escaping and rolling down his cheek. The surgery is paid for. Everything is paid for. You're going to be okay. Sarah closed her eyes, a single sob racking her thin chest. I knew it. I knew your voice was a gift from God. It wasn't just my voice, Henry said, glancing toward the door. Cole Harrington stood in the doorway. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his jaw was covered in stubble, and his eyes were red. He looked human. He looked vulnerable. Sarah's gaze shifted to him. The room went unnervingly still. 10 years of silence, of struggle, and of what-ifs surged between them like a tidal wave. Cole, she breathed. Cole walked to the bed and sank to his knees, just as he had on the rooftop, but this time he didn't have a Detective Miller or a Julian Vane to hide behind. He took her hand and pressed it to his forehead. I'm sorry, Sarah, he choked out. I spent 10 years running from the best thing that ever happened to me because I was a coward. I let you fight this alone. I let my son grow up counting quarters while I sat on a throne of lies. Sarah reached out her other hand, trembling, and touched his hair. I didn't want your money, Cole. I wanted the man I met in Georgia, the one who sang to the stars when he thought no one was listening. He's still here, Cole said, looking up. He's just been waiting for a reason to come back, and he found him. He looked at Henry. The aftermath. While the Brooks family was reuniting in the ICU, the world outside was in a state of absolute frenzy. The video of the lighting rig collapse and Vicky Harper's arrest had gone viral globally. Over 50 million people had watched the shoebox kid defy death. But with the fame came the vultures. In the hospital lobby, a swarm of reporters held their microphones like weapons. Is it true Cole Harrington is the father? Was the accident a publicity stunt? How much is the record deal worth? Cole's assistant, a young woman named Maya, fought her way through the crowd and into the elevator. She reached the ICU floor and found Cole sitting in the waiting area, staring at a legal document. Mr. Harrington, Maya whispered, the sponsors are pulling out. Julian Vane's arrest has sent the stock price into a tailspin. Harrington Records is being liquidated. The board is filing for bankruptcy. Cole didn't even look up. Let it burn, Maya. Sir, you're losing everything. Your house in Malibu, the private jet, the catalogs. I'm not losing anything that matters, Cole said, finally looking at her. There was a peace in his eyes that Maya had never seen. I spent 20 years building a kingdom for a king who didn't exist. Now I have a son who needs a father, not a mogul. Tell the lawyers to settle the debts. Whatever is left, put it in a trust for Henry. The hidden melody. Later that afternoon, as Sarah grew stronger, Henry pulled out his phone. Ma, there's something you need to hear. He played a recording from the night before. Not the sabotage, not the chaos. He played the song he sang before the lights fell. As the melody filled the hospital room, Sarah's eyes widened. She looked at Cole. That's the bridge, she said softly. The one you couldn't finish in 2016. Cole nodded. I could never find the right words for the ending. I thought the song was about a goodbye. And what is it about now? Sarah asked. Henry looked at his parents. He picked up the empty shoe box and placed it on his lap. It's about the quarters, he said. Cole and Sarah looked at him, confused. Every quarter I saved was a second of your life I was trying to buy, Henry said, his voice deep and serious. I realized that the song doesn't end with someone leaving. It ends with someone staying. It ends with the sound of a door opening, not closing. Suddenly, the door to the room did open. It was Detective Miller. He looked grim. Cole, can I see you in the hall, alone? Henry felt the old fear return. He stood up, his fists clenched. Is it Julian? Is he out? No, Miller said, glancing at Henry with a look of profound respect. Julian is going away for a long time, but we found something in his private safe, something about the night in Georgia. Cole stepped into the hall, his heart sinking. Not another secret. Please, not now. Miller handed him a small, weathered notebook. It's Sarah's medical file from the night of the accident 10 years ago. Julian had the original records suppressed. Cole. The reason the ambulance took so long to get to her that night wasn't because of the storm. Cole flipped through the pages. His face went pale. Julian called the dispatch center, Miller whispered. He told them it was a prank call. He redirected the paramedics to a false address 5 miles away. He wanted her to lose the baby, Cole. He wanted to make sure there was no complication to your career. Cole's hand crushed the edge of the notebook. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His mentor, his friend, had tried to kill his son before he was even born. Does Henry know? Cole asked, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. No, Miller said, and Sarah doesn't either. It's up to you if you want to tell them. Cole looked through the glass window at Henry, who was showing his mother a video of a puppy on his phone, making her laugh for the first time in years. Cole took the notebook, walked over to a nearby biohazard disposal bin, and dropped it in. The past is a graveyard, detective, Cole said. I'm done digging up bodies. From now on, we only look forward. But as Cole turned back toward the room, he saw a man standing at the end of the hallway. It was the man in the trench coat. He wasn't hiding this time. He tipped his hat to Cole, a silent acknowledgement of a debt paid in full, and walked toward the exit. The man in the trench coat was Sarah's father. The man who had threatened Cole 10 years ago. He had been watching over them the whole time, a silent guardian in the shadows. He didn't need to be a grandfather today. He just needed to know they were safe. Henry Brooks is no longer the boy in the damp hoodie. He is the voice of a generation. But as he stands backstage at Madison Square Garden, he isn't looking at the sold-out crowd. He's looking at a piece of white athletic tape, yellowed with age, still tucked into his wallet. Tonight, the mission isn't just to sing. It's to close the circle that began with $240 in quarters. The air in the dressing room was still. At 15, Henry Brooks had grown into his father's height and his mother's grace. He wore a simple black suit, no diamonds, no flash. He didn't need them. His value was no longer measured in coins. A knock came at the door. Cole Harrington walked in. He wasn't wearing a leather jacket or a designer suit. He wore a plain sweater and a look of quiet, unshakable pride. Over the last 5 years, Cole had walked away from the industry that nearly swallowed him. He now ran a nonprofit that provided music education to kids in the inner city, kids who carried their dreams in shoe boxes. You ready, son? Cole asked. Henry smiled, checking his reflection. I was born ready. How's Mom? Front row, center seat, Cole said, his voice thick with emotion. The doctors gave her a clean bill of health this morning. 5 years cancer-free, Henry. Henry closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of that victory wash over him. Mission accomplished. Dad, Henry called out as Cole turned to leave. Thanks for staying. Cole paused at the door, his silhouette framed by the bright lights of the hallway. Thanks for giving me a reason to. The grand stay. As Henry walked onto the stage of the world's most famous arena, the roar of 50,000 people was deafening. It was a long way from the supply closet of a supermarket, but Henry didn't start with a high-energy pop hit. He signaled the band to stay silent. He walked to the edge of the stage, sat on the wooden floor, and pulled an old, battered Nike shoe box from behind the monitors. He placed it in the center of the spotlight. The crowd went quiet, confused. 10 years ago, Henry's voice boomed, amplified by the massive speakers. This box was my bank. It was my hope. It was my mother's life. I thought that if I could just fill it with enough silver, I could buy a miracle. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single quarter. He dropped it into the box. The clink echoed through the stadium. "I was wrong," Henry whispered. "You don't buy miracles, you build them. You build them with the people who don't leave when the lights go out. You build them with the truth, even when it hurts. This song. This is for the ones who are still counting their quarters. Don't stop. The music is coming." Henry began to sing. It was the completed version of the song from Georgia, the one Cole couldn't finish, and Henry had perfected. "The road was long, the rain was cold, but I found the heart inside the gold. No more shadows, no more lies. I see the sun in my mother's eyes." In the front row, Sarah Brooks wept openly, her hand locked in Cole. She looked at her son, the boy who had been a warrior at 10 and a king at 15. She didn't see the star. She saw the boy who had scrubbed hubcaps until his fingers bled just to keep her breathing. The final act. As the final note faded, the stadium erupted in a standing ovation that lasted for 10 minutes. But Henry wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at the side of the stage. There, standing in the shadows of the wings, was an old man in a trench coat. He didn't clap. He just nodded once, a sharp, military-style gesture of respect. Henry recognized those eyes. They were the eyes from the hospital hallway, the eyes of the grandfather he had never officially met, but who had watched over his every step. Henry stepped off the stage, bypassing the VIP after-party and the record executives. He walked straight to the man in the trench coat. "You're him," Henry said. The man smiled, a weary, honest smile. "I'm just a man who's glad he was wrong about your father. You did good, kid. You did real good." The man turned to walk away, but Henry grabbed his arm. "Wait, my mom. She's right there. She's been waiting for you for a long time." The man hesitated, the ghosts of a decade pulling at his coat. But then he looked at Sarah, who was standing at the edge of the stage, her eyes wide with realization. The old man let out a long breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped into the light. The family was finally whole. The closing credits. The screen fades to black as the soft acoustic melody of Henry's song continues to play. Text begins to scroll. Vicky Harper and Julian Vane are currently serving life sentences without the possibility of parole for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. The Sarah Brooks Foundation has since raised over $500 million for pediatric and maternal cancer research. Cole Harrington and Sarah Brooks were married in a small ceremony in Georgia, on the very spot where the blue Chevrolet once broke down. Henry Brooks continues to tour the world, but he still carries a shoe box backstage at every show to remind him that it doesn't matter how much you have, but what you're willing to give. Henry's story reminds us that even when the world tries to dim your light, your voice is a weapon. The quarters in your pocket might be small, but the heart behind them is a giant. If this story touched your soul, if you believe that no struggle is too great and no love is too small, then hit that like button. Subscribe to join our family of survivors. And most importantly, share this with someone who is currently counting their own quarters in the dark. Tell them the sun is coming. Leave a comment below with the word survivor if you've ever fought for someone you love. We read every single one. Until next time, keep singing your song.